My daughter Melissa said, my pension checks were becoming too much for me to manage after William died. She offered to handle the deposits, the bills, and the little things, she said. A woman my age should not have to worry about a loan. For 6 months, I believed her. Then I went to the bank because my pharmacy card was declined, and the branch manager printed a list of transfers from my account. Every month, the same amount had been moved out just days after my pension arrived. The destination was not a utility company. It was not a medical expense. It was an account connected to my daughter, and when Melissa saw the papers in my hand, she did not apologize. She said, "You were never going to use all that money anyway." Subscribe for more stories where the records tell the truth, and comment, would you check every transfer yourself? For a few seconds after Melissa said those words, I could not answer her. We were standing in my kitchen. The late afternoon sun fell across the table William had refinished himself nearly 30 years earlier. On that table sat the papers Mr. Holloway, the branch manager, had printed for me. 6 pages, 6 months of dates, 6 transfers. Every one of them carried the same description: online transfer, outgoing. Every one of them had happened within 48 hours of my pension deposit, and everyone had gone to an account I had never seen before. Melissa stood beside the counter with her purse still on her shoulder. She had rushed over after I called and told her I needed to speak with her. At first, she wore the worried expression she had practiced so often since William died. Her eyebrows had pulled together. Her mouth had made that soft, patient line. "Mom," she had said when she arrived, "what happened? Did somebody scare you at the bank?" But then she saw the papers and the worry left her face. Not all at once. It slipped away in pieces. First, her eyes stopped pretending to be confused. Then her shoulders lowered. Finally, she looked down at the transfers as if I had placed a grocery list in front of her. "You were never going to use all that money anyway." That was when I understood that my daughter had not made a mistake. She had made a decision. I looked at her across the table and said, "It was mine." Melissa let out a breath through her nose. "I know it was yours." "Then why did you move it?" "I didn't move all of it." The answer came so quickly that it almost sounded rehearsed. I remember staring at her. "That is what you have to say." "What do you want me to say?" she asked. "That I was struggling? Because I was. You know I was. I knew you and Scott had problems with the house payment." "Problems?" Her voice sharpened. "Mom, we were behind. The kids needed things. The furnace was acting up. Scott's hours got cut. And you decided that gave you the right to take my pension?" "I did not take it." She pressed both hands against the edge of the counter. "I used it. There is a difference." That sentence stayed with me. Not I borrowed it. Not I am sorry. I used it. As though a lifetime of careful saving had been nothing more than a cupboard she could open when her own shelves ran empty. I had always known money could make people reveal themselves. William used to say that money did not change a person as much as it gave them room to show what they already believed they deserved. Still, I had not expected to learn that lesson from my own child. Before William died, our pension had never felt like a large thing. It was simply the result of years passing in an orderly way. His years at the county maintenance department. Mine at the Willow Creek Public Library, the extra shifts, the lunches packed from home, the vacations we postponed, the small decisions that never made us look wealthy but always allowed us to sleep at night. William had been the kind of man who checked every statement with a yellow highlighter. Not because he distrusted people, because he respected what it had taken to earn every dollar. On the first Saturday of each month, he would sit at the end of this very table with his coffee, his reading glasses, and a neat stack of envelopes. He always made room for me beside him, even when there was nothing I needed to do. "Two sets of eyes," he would say. "That is how you keep a household honest." After he passed, I could not bring myself to sit in his chair for almost a year. Melissa knew that. She knew how difficult it was for me to look at bills without remembering his hands flattening the corners of an envelope. She knew I had begun putting statements unopened into a blue basket by the hall closet, telling myself I would deal with them later. That was how she entered the space William left behind. Not with force, with concern. It started 3 months after the funeral. I had gone over to Melissa's house for Sunday dinner. The children were loud in the living room, arguing over a game, and Scott was outside trying to get the grill to light. Melissa stood at the sink rinsing plates. She did not look at me when she said, "Mom, are you keeping up with your bills?" I remember laughing a little. "Of course I am. You forgot the electric bill last month. I paid it 2 days late. You never used to do that." I turned toward her. "Your father handled the online part. I am still getting used to it." That was true. William had set up most of the automatic payments during his illness because he wanted things simple for me. He had written the passwords in a little black address book and kept it in the drawer beside his chair. After he died, I changed some of them, but not all. Computers had never frightened me exactly. They simply made me feel as if I were always one wrong click away from losing something I could not get back. Melissa dried her hands on a dish towel. "I could help," she said, "just until you feel settled." There was nothing cruel in her voice that day. Nothing I could point to and say, "There." That was the moment my daughter began to see me as an opportunity. She sounded loving. She sounded practical. And I was tired, so I said yes. At first, she only came by once a week. She would sit at my dining table with her laptop and ask me where I kept the utility bills. She helped me put the pharmacy on automatic refill. She called the cable company after they raised my rate. She even found a discount on my homeowner's insurance that saved me a few dollars a month. I was grateful. I told my neighbor Lorraine that I did not know what I would have done without Melissa. Lorraine had looked at me over the top of her garden fence and said, "It is good to have help. Just make sure help does not become control." At the time, I thought she was being overly cautious. Lorraine had been divorced twice and trusted no one with a key, a checkbook, or a casserole dish. I smiled and told her Melissa was my daughter. Lorraine did not argue. She only said, "That is why I would be extra careful." I thought about that conversation many times afterward. The first change came when Melissa suggested that my pension deposit be moved into an account she could monitor more easily. "I am not taking over," she assured me. "I just need to make sure your bills clear before anything unexpected happens." I asked why she needed access if the money was already in my account. "Because, Mom, if you get sick or forget a payment, I cannot fix it from the outside." She had me add her as an authorized user online. Then she asked whether she could help set up a separate savings account for emergencies. I remember feeling uncertain. Melissa noticed. She reached across the table and touched my hand. "Dad would want someone looking out for you." That was the sentence that opened the door. People think manipulation always sounds harsh. Sometimes it sounds like the person you miss most in the world. So I let her do it. The first month, she moved $200 into the emergency account. The second month, it was $300. When I asked why, she said property taxes were coming up, and she wanted to make sure I was prepared. Then she told me she had reorganized my account dashboard because all those numbers were confusing. After that, I did not look as closely as I should have. That is difficult to admit. But grief has a way of making ordinary work feel heavy. I could still cook. I could still drive. I could still read a book in one afternoon and remember every name in it. But some days, opening a bank statement felt like opening the door to a room where William had just stepped out. Melissa knew that too. By the time I went to the bank, I had begun relying on her for nearly everything connected to money. She paid my utilities through the online account. She told me when my insurance draft would clear. She moved money to keep it organized. When I asked about a charge, she gave me a quick answer, then changed the subject to the grandchildren. I did not see the pattern because I did not want to see one. The day my pharmacy card was declined, I had gone in for my blood pressure medicine and the refill for my arthritis. The pharmacist, a young man named Daniel who had worked there for years, swiped my card twice. Then he lowered his voice. "Mrs. Clark, it is coming back as insufficient funds." I actually smiled at him. There must be something wrong with the machine. He tried again. There was not. I had never had a card declined in my life. Not when William was sick. Not when our roof needed replacing. Not when I had to buy plane tickets on short notice to attend my sister's funeral. I stood there with my prescriptions on the counter and felt something small and cold settle in my chest. Daniel asked if I wanted him to hold the medication until I could contact my bank. I nodded because I did not trust my voice. Then I walked out to my car, sat behind the wheel, and called Melissa. She did not answer. I called again. This time, she sent a text. In a meeting. What is it? I typed. My pharmacy card was declined. Her response came almost immediately. Probably a bank error. Don't panic. I'll handle it later. There was something about that message that bothered me. Not the words themselves. Melissa had always been brisk when she was busy. It was the certainty. She did not ask how much the prescription cost. She did not ask whether I had spoken with the bank. She did not sound surprised. She sounded as though she already knew why the card had failed. Instead of driving home, I drove straight to the Willow Creek Community Bank. Mr. Holloway had managed the branch for several years. He knew William. He had attended the visitation after William passed and stood in line quietly with his wife to offer condolences. When I told him my card had been declined, he did not make me feel foolish. He led me into a small office with a round table and a box of tissues in the corner. Let's take a look, he said. He asked for my identification, then opened my account on his screen. At first, his expression did not change. Then he leaned forward. Mrs. Clark, he said carefully, have you authorized regular transfers from this account? What transfers? He looked at me for a moment. I can print the activity for you. He did not answer my question, and that frightened me more than if he had. The printer began humming behind his desk. I heard each page slide out. 1, 2, 3, 6. When he placed them in front of me, I saw the amounts before I saw anything else. $900, $900, $900. The same amount, month after month. Not once. Not twice. 6 times. $5,400. For a moment, I could not understand the numbers. They seemed detached from my life, like figures in an article about someone else. Then Mr. Holloway pointed to the transfer destination. The account had a name I did not recognize at first. M. Collins Household Services. Melissa's married name was Collins. I looked up at him. Is that my daughter's account? Mr. Holloway folded his hands. I cannot discuss another customer's private account details, but I can tell you that the transfer authorization on your profile was created using your online banking access. My mouth went dry. Was I there when it was created? I cannot say that. Can you tell me whether it came from my computer? He hesitated, then said, the authorization was completed through online banking. I would strongly recommend that we secure your access immediately and review all recent activity. That was when I began to shake. Not wildly, not dramatically, just enough that the papers trembled when I tried to pick them up. Mr. Holloway offered me water. I did not take it. Instead, I looked at the transfer dates. They were almost always Tuesdays. And every Tuesday was the day Melissa came to my house to help with the bills. There were other things on the statement, too. Small charges I did not recognize. A payment app transfer for $150. A department store purchase from a town 40 minutes away. A late fee on my gas bill, even though Melissa had promised she was handling every payment on time. The emergency account I believed was growing had barely any money in it. The more I looked, the more my stomach tightened. Mr. Holloway asked if I wanted to report suspected unauthorized activity. I said I needed to speak with my daughter first. His face did not change, but his voice grew firmer. Mrs. Clark, before you do that, I would advise you to change your passwords, remove any additional access, and keep copies of these records somewhere safe. I nodded. Then I asked the question I was most afraid to ask. Can she still move money today? He turned back to his screen. Not once we placed the restriction. I signed the forms with a hand that did not feel like mine. When I walked out of the banks, the sky had turned gray. Rain had started tapping lightly against my windshield. I sat in the parking lot with the printed statements on the passenger seat and thought about all the times Melissa had told me I should not worry. All the times she had taken the papers from my hands. All the times she had said, "Let me do it." For the first time, I wondered whether she had been helping me at all, or whether she had been teaching me to stop looking. I called her from the parking lot. "Melissa," I said when she answered, "come to my house this evening. We need to talk." She gave a small laugh. "About the card? I told you, I'll fix it." "No," I said. "About my pension." The line went quiet, not for long, but long enough. Then she said, "I'll be there at 6, and when she hung up, I looked down at the 6 pages in my lap and realized I had only seen the beginning of what my daughter had done. Melissa arrived at 6 o'clock exactly. She did not knock. She used the key I had given her years ago, when William was still alive and I thought a spare key meant safety. I heard the front door open, then close softly behind her. "Mom?" she called. "Where are you?" "In the kitchen." She came in wearing a rain-darkened coat and carrying the same leather purse she had brought that afternoon. Her hair was pulled back neatly. Her expression had changed again. The hard edge I had seen when she read the bank papers was gone. In its place was something softer, something almost wounded. She sat across from me at the table and placed both hands around the mug of coffee I had set out for her. She did not drink it. "I should not have said it that way," she began. I looked at her. "You should not have done it." Her eyes filled quickly. Melissa had always been able to cry without making a sound. Even as a child, she could sit in the corner with tears sliding down her cheeks, and every adult in the room would suddenly feel as though they had failed her. For a moment, I felt that old instinct rise in me, the instinct to comfort her, to make the room easier for her. Then I looked down at the 6 pages between us. "What is M. Collins Household Services?" I asked. She wiped beneath one eye with her fingertip. "It is an account I opened to keep our household bills separate." "Why was my money going into it?" "Because I needed help. You had no right." "I know that." Her voice cracked. "I know it looks terrible." "It does not only look terrible, Melissa." She looked away. I reached for the top statement and tapped the first transfer. $900 on November 9th. $900 on December 11th. $900 in January. Then February, March, and April. "Did you think I would never notice?" "I thought I could put it back." "With what?" She did not answer. I asked again. "With what, Melissa?" Her mouth tightened. "Scott's work was supposed to pick up in the spring." "Supposed to?" He had a manager who promised him more hours. And did he get them? No. There it was. The first real answer of the evening. Melissa leaned forward. "You do not understand what it is like, Mom. You had Dad, you had 2 incomes, you had help." I felt my back straighten. "Your father and I did not have help," I said. "We had each other and we had discipline. That is easy for you to say now." No. It was not easy then either. I could hear my own voice changing. It was still quiet, but it no longer carried the softness I had used with her for 6 months. "When you were little, your father worked overtime in January because the furnace went out. I took extra hours shelving books after closing. We ate beans and cornbread for 2 weeks because we had promised ourselves we would not borrow money we could not repay. We did not take from people who trusted us." Melissa gave a short, bitter laugh. "So you are saying I am a thief. I am saying you transferred $5,400 from my account without my permission. I was going to replace it. You said you used it. I did use it. But I was going to replace it when things got better. Things do not get better because you take from your mother." That landed between us. For the first time, she stopped crying. Her face went still. Then she said, "You have no idea how much pressure I am under." I wanted to say that pressure did not make a person steal. It revealed what they were willing to justify. But I did not say it. Not yet. Instead, I asked her to tell me everything. At first, she gave me pieces. The mortgage was behind. Scott had missed work after hurting his shoulder. Their oldest daughter needed braces. The furnace repair had cost more than expected. There had been credit card bills, then a payday loan, then another one. Each explanation arrived wrapped in urgency. Each one asked me to imagine the fear she had felt, and I did imagine it. I imagined Melissa lying awake at night with bills stacked on the counter. I imagined her children sleeping down the hall while she stared at a bank balance that would not stretch far enough. I imagined the shame of calling a lender and hearing a stranger ask for money she did not have. But even as I listened, another picture formed in my mind. Melissa sitting at my table, Melissa opening my laptop, Melissa clicking through the screens that led to my pension account, Melissa typing an amount, Melissa pressing submit. Once might have been panic. 6 times was a system. When she finally stopped talking, I asked, "Did Scott know?" Her eyes moved toward the window. That was answer enough. "Did he know?" I asked again. "He knew we were getting help. From me? He knew I was handling it." That is not what I asked. Melissa stood so abruptly that her chair scraped across the floor. "You want to make this as ugly as possible." "No," I said. "I want the truth. The truth is that I was drowning." The truth is that you chose me as the person you could drown instead. She looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. Not anger exactly. Something colder. You would have given it to me if I asked. No, I said. The answer surprised both of us. Melissa blinked, I continued. I might have helped with groceries. I might have paid for the furnace repair directly. I might have sat down with you and helped you make a plan. But I would not have given you $5,400 with no explanation and no agreement to repay it. Her shoulders stiffened. Why not? Because I am 68 years old. Melissa, I have one income now. Your father is gone. I need to know I can pay for my own life. She stared at me as if that had never occurred to her. Or perhaps it had, and she had simply decided it mattered less than her own needs. I did not ask her to leave right away. I wish I could say I knew exactly what to do, but I did not. I was still a mother, even after the bank statements, even after the words she had used. I told her I had changed the online banking access and removed her from my accounts. Her face tightened again. You did that already? Yes, so you went straight to the bank before even talking to me. My pharmacy card was declined. I said I would handle it. That is exactly the problem. She picked up her purse. I cannot believe you think I planned to hurt you. I looked at the statements. Then I looked back at my daughter. I do not know what you planned, I said, but I know what you did. She left without touching the coffee. After the door shut, I stood in the kitchen for a long time. The house was quiet except for the rain against the windows and the refrigerator cycling on and off. There had been nights after William died when silence felt like a weight. That night, it felt like evidence. I gathered the papers and placed them in the old black folder William had kept for important documents. Then I sat in his chair. For the first time in nearly 2 years, I opened the drawer beside it. The little black address book was still there, so was the yellow highlighter. I held it in my hand, and I cried. Not because I wished William could fix it. He could not, and I did not need him to. I cried because I wished I had understood sooner that being alone did not mean I had to surrender my judgment. The next morning, I called the bank again. Mr. Holloway put me through to a woman named Dana Ruiz from their fraud review department. Dana explained that the bank could investigate the transfers as potentially unauthorized, but they would need to examine the account history, the electronic authorization, and any communications connected to the activity. I should be honest, she told me. Because your daughter had access to your online banking, the review may take time. But you have done the right thing by securing your account and preserving the records. What happens if I cannot get the money back? I cannot promise an outcome, Dana said gently. But we can document what occurred and determine whether there were transfers you did not knowingly approve. I wrote down every word. Then she asked me something I had not considered. Mrs. Clark, did your daughter have access to your email account as well? I thought about it. When Melissa had set up my online banking dashboard, she had also changed the email connected to it. She told me my old email was too cluttered and that she would create one just for bills. At the time, I had thanked her. Now I felt my stomach twist. I do not know, I said. Dana paused. It may be important to find out. That afternoon, Lorraine came over with a container of chicken soup and took one look at my face. What happened? She asked. I had not planned to tell anyone. Shame has a way of making you protect the person who harmed you. I did not want the neighbors whispering that Rebecca Clark could not manage her own money. I did not want anyone looking at me with pity. But Lorraine sat across from me in the living room and waited, so I told her. Not every detail at first. Then all of them. When I finished, she did not say, I told you so. She did not say, how could you let this happen? She reached over and covered my hand with hers. Rebecca, she said, trusting your daughter was not foolish. What she did with that trust was wrong. Those words gave me more relief than I expected. Because until then, I had been blaming myself for every transfer, every password, every unopened statement. Lorraine looked toward the blue basket by the hall closet. Do you still have the old statements? I think so. Then we start there. We spent nearly 2 hours going through the basket. Most of the envelopes were unopened. Some had been stacked in order. Some had been shoved in carelessly after Melissa came by. I found utility bills, insurance letters, notices about my prescription plan, and printed account summaries Melissa had left for me. At first, the summaries looked ordinary. They had my name at the top, the bank logo, a monthly balance. But when Lorraine compared them to the statements Mr. Holloway had printed, she noticed something. "Rebecca," she said, pointing to a page from February, "this summary says your savings balance was $4,200. I looked at the bank statement from the same month. The actual balance had been $1,800. I stared at the two pages. The font was almost identical. The logo was almost identical. But the summary Melissa had printed was not an official statement. It was a screen capture, a picture, and it had been altered. I sat back slowly. Melissa had not only moved the money, she had been showing me false balances so I would not notice it disappearing. My hands began to feel cold. Then Lorraine found an email printout tucked beneath a cable bill. It was a notice from the bank about an account alert. The message had been sent to the new email address Melissa created. At the bottom, in small gray letters, was the email account name, melissacollins.hevam@gmail.com. Not mine. Hers. I looked at the page until the letters blurred. All those months, my bank had been sending notices, and my daughter had made sure I never saw them. That evening, I called Dana Ruiz back. I told her about the altered account summaries. I told her about the email address. I told her I had never approved Melissa to receive my banking alerts at her personal email. Dana listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "Mrs. Clark, please do not confront her again until we have documented everything you have found." I already did, I understand. But from this point forward, let the records speak for you. There was something steady in her voice. It reminded me of William's old saying about two sets of eyes. I had spent months allowing Melissa to make me feel as though I was incapable of seeing clearly. But the truth was there. In the transfer dates, in the altered balances, in the email address she had hidden from me. And as I placed every document into William's black folder, I realized I was no longer waiting for my daughter to explain herself. I was preparing to find out how far she had gone. The next morning, I drove to the office of an attorney named Judith Moore. Judith had handled the paperwork when William and I updated our wills several years earlier. She was not a dramatic woman. She had short silver hair, square glasses, and a calm way of speaking that made every sentence sound like it had been measured before she offered it. When I told her why I had come, she did not interrupt me. I placed William's black folder on her desk and took out the bank statements, the altered account summaries, the email notice, and the notes I had made after speaking to Dana Ruiz. Then I told Judith about Melissa. Not just the transfers. I told her how my daughter had first offered to help after William died, how she had moved my banking alerts to her own email, how she had created a false picture of my savings balance, how she had looked me in the eye and said I was never going to use all that money anyway. Judith read through the papers slowly. When she finished, she folded her hands. "Rebecca," she said, "you have taken the correct first steps. You secured your accounts, preserved the records, and contacted the bank. Now we need to make sure no other authority has been created in your name." "What do you mean?" "Your daughter had enough access to your banking information that we should confirm whether she opened credit accounts, changed beneficiaries, or signed any documents that give her broader control." The room seemed to tilt slightly. I had come in believing the worst thing Melissa could have done was take 6 monthly transfers. But Judith was showing me that a person who had crossed one boundary could have crossed others. I signed the forms she prepared for a credit review and a records request. Then she helped me make a list of every account and every document Melissa had ever organized for me. Checking, savings, pension, insurance, utility accounts, prescription coverage, the black address book, the old filing cabinet in the basement. By the time I left Judith's office, I had a folder full of instructions and a feeling I had not known in months. It was not peace, not yet, but it was direction. Over the next 4 days, the truth came in pieces. The bank confirmed that the email address attached to my account alerts had been changed during one of Melissa's online sessions from my house. The device used to approve several transfers had been registered after Melissa updated my laptop. Dana Ruiz explained that the fraud review team had found something else. A series of smaller transfers had been sent through a payment app connected to the same account. Not large enough to make me immediately suspicious, $150, $200, $75, a total of $1,140 over 6 months. Some had been marked home supplies. Others had no description at all. When Dana told me the total amount that had left my accounts, I had to ask her to repeat it. $6,540. I wrote the number down on a yellow legal pad. Then I sat there looking at it until the ink blurred. That was more than money. That was 6 months of groceries, medicine, utilities, and small repairs. It was the emergency fund William and I had built so I would never have to choose between a prescription and a heating bill. It was also the exact amount Melissa's had decided I could live without. 2 days later, Judith called. "Rebecca," she said, "the credit review is clear. There are no new loans or credit cards in your name." I let out a breath I had not realized I was holding. "But," she continued, "we found a beneficiary change request connected to your pension account." My hand tightened around the phone. "What kind of request?" "A form was submitted online to change your remaining pension beneficiary from your estate to Melissa." I could not speak. Judith's voice softened. The request was not completed. The pension administrator sent a verification letter to the email address on file, which appears to have been Melissa's. There was no signed confirmation from you, so the change did not go through. I closed my eyes. Melissa had not stopped at money already in my account. She had looked ahead. She had tried to position herself around what would be left after me. That was the moment something inside me changed. I had spent days wondering whether I had been too harsh, whether I should have given my daughter more time to explain, whether desperation had made her do something she would regret. But a person who regretted taking from you did not quietly try to place herself ahead of your estate. That was not panic. That was planning. Judith asked whether I wanted to send Melissa a formal demand for repayment. "Yes," I said. My voice was steady, and I want every account changed, every beneficiary reviewed, every document updated. "Good," Judith said. "We will do it carefully." The following Friday, Melissa called me 17 times. I did not answer. She left 3 voicemails. The first was angry. "Mom, this is ridiculous. The bank froze our account because of you. Scott is furious. You need to call them and tell them this was a family matter." The second was softer. "I know you are upset, but you do not understand what you are doing to us. The kids could lose their home." The third came late that night. Her voice was quiet. "Please call me. I am scared." I listened to all 3 messages while sitting at the end of the dining table. Then I placed my phone face down. I was scared too. But I had been scared alone, with my pharmacy card declined, and my own money gone. Melissa had not called to ask whether I could afford my medicine. She had only called when the consequences reached her. The next week, Judith sent Melissa a letter requesting repayment, preservation of all relevant financial records, and no further contact about my accounts except through counsel. Melissa came to my house anyway. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Lorraine was with me because she had insisted I should not be alone for a while. We were sorting old photographs at the dining table when the doorbell rang. Through the front window, I saw Melissa standing on the porch. Her car was parked at the curb. Scott sat in the driver's seat, staring straight ahead. My first instinct was to open the door. Then I remembered Dana's words, "Let the records speak for you." I walked to the door but kept the chain in place. "Mom," Melissa said when she saw me, "please, I just need 5 minutes." "You received Judith's letter." "Yes. Then you know what you need to do." She looked past me and noticed Lorraine. Her expression changed. "Oh, so now you have the neighborhood involved." "I have a friend here. This is between us." "No," I said. "It stopped being only between us when you used my account." She pressed her palm against the doorframe. "Scott did not know everything." "Did he know you were taking money from me?" Her eyes dropped. "He knew I was getting help." That is not an answer. He knew some of it. The truth hurt, but it did not surprise me anymore. Melissa swallowed hard. "We can work something out. I can pay you back a little at a time. Judith has asked for a repayment plan and a full accounting. You are treating me like a criminal. I am treating you like an adult who made choices." Her face tightened. "You do not care what happens to my children." That sentence almost found its way into my heart. Almost. I thought of my grandchildren. I thought of their backpacks by the front door, Their Christmas pajamas, the way the youngest one liked to sit beside William's old chair and ask me to tell stories about her grandpa. I loved those children. But loving them did not mean allowing their mother to use them as a shield. I care about your children, I said. That is why I will not teach them that hurting family is acceptable when you need money. Melissa began to cry again. This time, I did not look away. I am sorry, she said. It was the first time she had said those words. But even then, there was a difference between hearing an apology and trusting it. What are you sorry for? I asked. She looked at me through the narrow opening in the door. For taking the money. For what else? She hesitated. For lying. For changing my email? Her face crumpled. Yes. For trying to change my pension beneficiary? She froze. The silence answered before she did. I did not finish it, she whispered. You started it. I was afraid, Mom. So was I. She stood on the porch for another moment, crying quietly. Then she said, I do not know how to fix this. I thought about all the years I had spent fixing things for Melissa, replacing what she lost, covering a bill, watching the children when she was overwhelmed, making excuses when she missed a family dinner, telling myself that one day she would become more responsible if I only helped enough. But help without boundaries had not made her stronger. It had made her believe I would always absorb the cost. You begin by telling the whole truth, I said. To Judith, to the bank, to Scott, then you repay what you took. She nodded once. I closed the door. For several minutes, neither Lorraine nor I spoke. Then she reached for my hand. You did the hard thing, she said. No, I told her. The hard thing was believing I had to keep the door open no matter what. Melissa did meet with Judith. She gave a written statement acknowledging that she had moved money from my account without my permission. She admitted she had changed the banking alert email and created the altered balance summaries. She also confirmed that Scott knew some of the transfers had come from me, although he claimed he had not known the full amount or the details of the online access. The bank completed its review. Because I had not knowingly authorized the transfers and because Melissa had used my credentials and diverted my account alerts, they were able to return part of the money to my account. The remaining amount became part of the repayment agreement Judith negotiated with Melissa. It was not quick. Justice rarely is. Melissa had to sell the newer car she and Scott could no longer afford. They moved into a smaller rental after arranging a payment plan with their mortgage lender. She took a second job on weekends. Scott picked up evening work. None of that made me happy. I did not want my daughter to suffer. But I also did not confuse consequences with cruelty anymore. For a time, I did not see Melissa or the children. That was the part people outside the family did not always understand. They would say, but she is your daughter, as if a title erased an action. As if being someone's mother meant I had to make peace before I had made sense of what happened. I sent birthday gifts for the children through the mail. I attended their school concert once, sitting in the back beside Lorraine. I did not speak to Melissa that evening. I simply watched my granddaughter sing too loudly and out of tune, with a bright yellow ribbon in her hair. I cried on the drive home, not because I regretted setting boundaries, because love and grief can sit in the same heart at the same time. Months passed. My pension account was placed under protections that required direct verification for major changes. I opened a new email address that only I controlled. Judith helped me name an independent trustee for my estate documents, someone who had no financial interest in my decisions, and on the first Saturday of every month, I began sitting at the dining table with William's yellow highlighter. At first it hurt. Then it became something else. A ritual. I made coffee. I opened each statement. I read every line. I called the bank when I did not understand something. I kept my files in order. 2 sets of eyes, William used to say. Now I understood that sometimes one pair of eyes is enough, as long as you trust yourself to use them. Nearly a year after the bank printed those first transfers, Melissa asked if she could come by. Judith had told me the repayment plan was current. Melissa had completed a financial counseling program. She had been making every payment on time for 4 months. I told her she could visit for 1 hour. No money talk, no requests, no guilt. When she arrived, she stood on the porch with no purse over her shoulder and no practiced expression on her face. She looked tired, older somehow. I am not here to ask for anything, she said. I know. We sat in the living room. For a while, we talked about the children, their school, their new apartment, the tomato plants Melissa had tried to grow on the small balcony. Then she looked at me and said, I thought being your daughter meant I would always have somewhere to go when I made a mess. It meant you always had someone who loved you, I said. It never meant you had the right to use me. She nodded, and tears filled her eyes. I know that now. I wanted to believe her. But belief had to grow slowly after something like that, so I did not make promises. I did not say everything was forgiven. I simply said, keep showing me. That was all. When she left, I stood at the front window and watched her walk to her car. There was sadness in me, but there was also something solid beneath it. My life was still mine. My home was still mine. My pension was still mine. And my kindness, I had learned, was not a thing anyone could take from me and call their own. If this story reminded you that protecting your independence is not selfish, please subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone who may need to check their own records. And tell me in the comments, after a family member breaks your trust, what boundary would you put in place first?